This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and it's Smackdown time. You guys asked for it, so you're getting it. We have the new 12-inch MacBook, otherwise known as the Retina MacBook, smacking it down with the also 12-inch Microsoft Surface Pro 3. They're both 12 inches. They're both portable computers. Beyond that, they have so little in common. We're going to compare them now. So here we have two really desirable portables, sub-portables, whatever you want to call them, some of the smallest guys on the planet with pretty decent computing power. We got the 12-inch MacBook here. Obviously, this one's in space gray, available in your choice of silver, space gray, or gold. And we have Surface Pro 3 that comes in just one color. I don't think that's terribly important, though. Neither of these is particularly inexpensive. However, Surface Pro 3 will actually be the less expensive between these two. They put more emphasis on fit, finish, style, materials, specs, all that sort of thing than they do on being affordable, obviously. So, with our Surface Pro 3, we have the optional Surface Pro type cover here. With the Mac, it is a laptop first and foremost. It has a permanently attached keyboard. Now, when it comes to keyboards, you're talking about kind of weird and even weirder, right? If you watch our full review of the MacBook, you know that despite the fact that this has very, very little travel, the keyboard is actually very responsive and very clicky. It doesn't ever feel normal, I don't think. You probably, eventually might get used to it and start to think of it as normal, but it's fine for typing. Now, the Surface Pro type cover, which is obviously a removable accessory for our Surface, and it has a little magnetic mount right there. Pretty firmly attached it is. It's backlit. Both of these are backlit. This one has actually a little bit more key travel, but it's kind of odd. It's certainly not a chiclet-style keyboard. I actually find it pretty easy to type on, and I do a lot of writing because I write reviews. Now, that's going to be up to you as to how you feel about that. I suggest that you try both of these in stores if you can to see how you like the keyboard, if a keyboard's important to you. There's a big if. Surface Pro 3 is a tablet first and foremost. I think some people that buy it really want to use it like a tablet. They're either using it for note-taking or art, diagramming, anything like that. Of course, it still has a full Core i5 CPU for our $999 model. There's also a Core i3. That's a Y series CPU, less powerful. And then there's a Core i7 available for this guy. So the Core i5, which I think a lot of people go for, that's clocked at 1.9 gigahertz with turbo boost to 2.9 gigahertz. Big difference here, Core M CPU, as you guys know by now, that's a even lower wattage CPU than the U series CPUs that are used in Ultrabooks. So nominally 1.1 gigahertz for the base clock rate, but it does have turbo boost up to 2.4 gigahertz. So for very short periods of time, very short, it's the key thing, it can scale up to take care of difficult tasks, challenging tasks. Another thing, different operating system. Right, Mac OS here, obviously Windows 8.1 currently running on our Surface Pro 3. Mac OS is very easy on the CPU. It uses a decent amount of RAM these days, but it's not as much of a processor-intensive OS. Though I have to say Windows 8 and 8.1 really managed to pare down the resource requirements as well. Anyway, I would recommend this running Mac OS. If you're going to run Windows on this, save yourself some money maybe and get the Asus ZenBook UX305. Granted, it is 13.3 inches and somewhat heavier, but for the price difference, you might be able to carry a little bit more around. Anyway, back to these two guys in particular. What makes the Surface Pro 3 so special among sort of laptops, if you want to call it that, and even tablets, is the fact that it is a full Ultrabook, basically in the guise of a tablet. Something that is as small, 1.76 pounds. But man and woman cannot live by tablet alone. Most people are going to get this $130 extra keyboard dock, and that brings up the weight to around 2.5 pounds or so. Our little Mac is just 2 pounds complete. Everything here. It's crazy thin. It's crazy light. And if we put them side by side, you can see. I mean, they're both quite slim machines, but the Mac outslims because it tapers some too. When it comes to displays, these are very close in resolution, so there's no clear winner there. Both of these are very high resolution displays. Different aspect ratio, 3:2 for the Surface Pro 3, because they were trying to make it bearable to use in portrait orientation if you wanted to do that when using it as a tablet. This one has 16:10 aspect ratio. Both of these have very high color gamut. The Surface Pro 3 is about 95% of sRGB, but our Mac is 102%. Actually exceeds a little bit. Now, what's 5%? among friends. It's not a huge difference, but I have to say that either way, you're getting some of the nicest displays on the market. One thing you are getting with the Surface Pro 3, if this is interesting to you and you want it, obviously if you're getting a tablet form factor device, you might be interested in the fact that this is a touch screen. So for those of you who are more Windows-centric or like the idea of touch, you get that here. Of course, Apple still says no, they only want touch on iOS devices, so this is not a touch screen. Also, we have the pen. For those of you who are into digital artwork, this has a digital N-trig pen. Very precise, very good, pressure-sensitive, palm rejection. So you can put your hand on the glass while you're writing and it won't create false lines. Obviously, none of that going on here. If you want to do artwork, you're going to have to get one of those external USB tablets. Wacom makes most of those. But it's just not the same as drawing directly on your piece of artwork. So I would go with Surface Pro 3 if you're an artist for sure. Likewise, if you're a note taker who wants to do handwritten notes, obviously it's going to be Surface Pro 3. If you're somebody who takes keyboarded notes, probably you're going to lean more towards this because it has once you get used to it, a better keyboard, I would say, compared to our Surface Pro type cover here. And it's just a standard, easy, no frills to carry notebook design. If you don't need any of those tablet features, if you don't want to touch, well, the laptop design makes sense. Of course, there's also the Dell XPS 13, which has a very compact form factor for those of you who just want a traditional notebook. And that's yet another smackdown with our MacBook. Next up is cameras. As some of you could care less about this, for some of you this is an important thing. Only a 480p webcam on the 12-inch MacBook, and obviously it's just a standard laptop, so there's only one that's above the display. Surface Pro 3 has a 5-megapixel camera. There's our rear one right there, front and back, each side. So if you do a lot of video chatting, that sort of thing, that could be important to you. Or if you're using it for vertical market use or even for art use and you want to walk around and take pictures of something and use that perhaps as a model for something that you're going to paint or draw afterwards, it could be important. In terms of heat and fan noise, neither of these gets really hot. This is a fanless design on the Mac. The Core M doesn't need a fan, so you'll never hear any noise coming from this. The bottom gets warm. It does not ever get like what I would call hot at all. Surface Pro 3, if you really work it hard, say you're doing something like, well, playing Civ 5, it'll get pretty toasty on the back. And these are vents here for the fan. It does have a fan, so this can actually, well, make some noise. Under normal use, just doing Word, Excel, your web, even playing, streaming full HD video, you usually won't hear the fan. You're going to hear it if you're doing something like playing demanding games, editing video, that sort of thing. Now, in terms of ports, you know, we never thought Surface Pro would beat much of anything, but it actually does. At this point, it has a 3.5mm combo audio jack for your headphones, your mic. Nothing up top there. And we have our single USB 3.0 port, standard USB there, and a mini display port for display out. It also has a micro SD card slot under the back flap. So normally, compared to a laptop, you'd say, well, that ain't much. But, well, suddenly it's going to seem very impressive because the MacBook, as most of you know by now, is the famous near portless design. There's our 3.5mm combo audio jack, and here is our single USB-C connector that also acts as the charging port. So you're going to need a splitting device if you just want to charge and use a USB device at the same time, and you're going to have to get an adapter to go from USB-C to your standard USB connector on it, the only port that's on here. So for once, Surface Pro 3 gets to win on this point. So how about speakers and video playback? Well, they both have two of my favorite displays on the market, so I can tell you that there's not going to be a huge difference in that. So let's listen right now.
You could call it the Retina MacBook to differentiate it from the old MacBooks, the plastic MacBooks, if you remember those from several years ago.
50% volume for both of these. Obviously, the Surface Pro 3 is not going to set the world on fire with its audio, so let's see how the Mac does.
In the world of laptops, ultrabooks, portables, iPad on steroids? No, it's really more than that. This is the 12.
Much nicer, right? Much fuller, a bit louder. So nicer speakers built in on the 12-inch MacBook, which was a real surprise to us because we didn't expect anything this small to sound that good. So lastly, there's that money question, which we touched upon a little bit. Surface Pro 3 starts at $799 for the Core i3. In terms of processing power, that's a pretty, it's a Y series Core i3. It's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. It's not much of an advantage over our Core M, especially because it doesn't have turbo boost. But if you're moving up to the $999 Core i5 model with 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gig SSD, now you're starting to talk there in terms of performance. And Geekbench 3, by the way, on the multi-core test, it scores about 1,000 higher than our Mac does. Single core tests, not as far apart. The Core M does still score slower, but the divide isn't as great there. Another thing about the Surface Pro 3, you're going to want that type cover, aren't you? You're going to need to type on the thing probably, so that's another $130. So then you're really not looking at $999, you're looking at $1,030. So our Mac starts at $1,299, and for $1,299, that's like the next step up in the Surface Pro, where you get 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gig SSD, which is exactly what you get in the Mac. So you're kind of at price parity there, other than the fact that the processor on the Surface Pro 3 is faster. In terms of your storage, in terms of your RAM, in terms of your display resolution, you're pretty on even footing. Both of them have dual band Wi-Fi, 802.11ac, and Bluetooth as well. And of course, there is the $1,599 configuration, which goes up to a 512 gig SSD on our Mac and 100 megahertz faster CPU. That really doesn't make much of a difference. And with Surface Pro 3, there's also a 512 gig option. You're also looking at around the same money. There's also a Core i7 available on the Surface Pro 3 for those who really want as much computing power as possible. So, as you can see, I know there have been some snickers about how overpriced this MacBook is. Once you factor in the cost of that keyboard, you're not really looking at much of a difference in price between these, other than keeping in mind that this one is going to give you more performance, more high horsepower. It's going to be certainly better for those of you who do more heavy-duty tasks. If you're compiling code, if you're editing 1080p video frequently. I don't mean you're your casual, once in a while, gee, I have my camera phone and I want to edit my videos. I mean, those of you who do it more often. Both of these can handle Photoshop pretty nicely. Obviously, it's going to be a little quicker on the Surface Pro 3, but as you can see in our full video that we did of this, it's not bad at all to work even with high-resolution RAW files on this Mac. So, in the end, if you need the most computing power, Surface Pro 3 is going to be it. If you need the traditional laptop form factor, first and foremost, and if you really like Mac OS, and I can't blame you if you do, then it's the 12-inch MacBook. So that's the 12-inch MacBook versus the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. As you can see, if you want a tablet primarily, if you need that digital pen, if you like Windows, this is the one for you. If you just want a traditionally designed laptop as small, light, elegant, and classy as possible, and you're cool with Mac OS particularly, then the 12-inch MacBook is the one. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to watch our video reviews of each of these products, read our written reviews, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.